because with change, to implement changes and things, especially economically, you need rules. You need more rules, and especially with top-down change. And I believe it has to come from the top, that goes to the bottom, and bottom can more go to the top to increase democracy. So, the power relations, power, I guess, proportional, like kind of you could think visually proportions of power. I think right now huge proportions would be at the top, a little bit to states, and pretty much not anything to communities or people. And I think we need to move also, obviously, to a circular economy, and this is kind of authoritarian. It needs to be implemented to reduce waste and to build the society up in a good way, the future society up, while also fighting, climate and pollution and helping the environment. It needs to be like, I imagine, a more connected society, connected with our neighbors and helping each other, not relying so much on external and about, learning and having technology help us in a good way, but not being like totally reliant upon that technologies and allowing it to take over, people's everyday lives, just for like convenience or whatever. It leads to monopolization and sickness, really. And some might say that a lot of policies or things that increase government power, well, that is, dangerous and everything. And rightly so. But how much power does the government already have, to control actually the whole world and history? Does not the U.S., the most powerful state, possibly in the history of mankind? And so, therefore, we have to take responsibility. It's already powerful. We already make history every day. So what it's more about just what kind of direction to take. It's not a matter of political beliefs. It's about reality. What is the reality? The government is very controlling, and we make history every day, and we're not seemingly caring about the future implications. And people are okay with this kind of direction and this kind of government. Then that's what, I disagree. Give more voice to the people. look at actually what's happening to our country and to the world. It's falling apart. That's reality. That's what's happening. You can say this or that. But what is real? Our actual, because of, you know, the economy and capitalistic society, the reality is the government is very powerful. But also at the same time, you take away power from the government, where does the power go to? That's the question. That's a good question. You want to give it to, the ultra rich, the corporations, given that you have a society that has worked in economy here in the U.S., especially the most powerful state, the most rich state in the world, where how much of the wealth is at the hands of very few people in the world today. Is it punishing people? No, no. Is it punishing people for being wealthy? If a tax bracket is truly fair, the more you make, the more you pay in taxes. Yes, but it should be at a stepwise. I believe at a stepwise kind of fashion. So it still rewards, obviously, increasing income. You still make more money, and earn more. You make more, you earn more. You take home more. But you also pay more in taxes. There's nothing unfair about that. That's how it's always been. Before, we got these crazy, stupid taxes brackets and whatnot. It's ridiculous. And for most everybody in, America, they would pay less in taxes. It would work like if you make under, especially $1 million or 500,000 or 200,000, people should be paying, a lot less. And this would improve our conditions in life and distribute more fairly, everything, but also still incentive to do good. There's nothing bad. Actually, I would say if you're already super wealthy and have a good position, might make it even so that you have more motivation to keep doing well, to try to keep making money, to get to a very top state. It would be harder to try, to have that sustained income and success when you are getting taxed more as you make more, not taxed zero or less as you make more or become super rich and wealthy. That's crazy. All that thinking does is produce, people who eat wealth, who pretty much vacuum up wealth into their already huge accounts and take advantage of working people, pretty much eating interest, eating the stock market, etc. It's not good. It's obvious.
A large number of medical workers have been suspended.
It's kind of surreal, honestly, because I love my job and I have been a COVID nurse since the beginning of the pandemic. I've been a nurse for 10 years. I worked for Kaiser for 5, and when the pandemic happened, we were scared in the beginning, like everybody, but it was this amazing time too, where we had really brave people. I work with amazing doctors and nurses who showed up to work every day and just rolled up their sleeves and faced their fears and walked into these rooms not knowing if they were going to get COVID or bring it home to their families.
More than 2,000 flights got canceled by American Airlines due to a pilot shortage. Law enforcement has also been hit by reductions.
It's not the issue that the public wanted or the politicians said they were going to deliver. They want this black and white issue. It's a gray area in between. You're going to have this big gap between qualified police officers who are trained, who are seasoned, new cops coming in. The quality of new cops coming in is going to be held to a lower standard, so you're not going to get the best candidates to patrol your streets and keep you safe. It's going to be a very organic, living, breathing problem that has no solution in sight.
With so many things going wrong, Joe Biden's approval ratings are now in freefall. The deaths haven't slowed down either. In fact, more people have died of COVID so far in 2021 than in 2020. So this year, Biden's two main plans, rebuild the people's trust and better fight COVID, have failed to come true. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
Well, just a reminder, the WHO says that vaccination or natural immunity are the best ways to stay safe.
For this, he's way surpassed the 52-week sentence for skipping bail back in 2012. So he's currently not serving any sentence, nor facing any actual criminal charges. Sounds like he's a political prisoner, right? Well, Washington prefers to deem him a security risk and wants him to answer questions across the pond on their turf and their rules. His supporters say pursuing a vendetta against Assange ultimately silences him, but will also silence other journalists in the future.
This is a CIA operation. Anyone who knows the United States well knows the power of the CIA, the extrajudicial power of the CIA, the extra governmental power of the CIA. That's what this is. This is what you've probably seen. 2008.
Evil needs to be rooted out.
First major leagues. It's March the 18th, 2008. It's from the U.S. Army.
Till we get a president that would pardon Assange and Snowden, I wouldn't trust them.
It lays out everything that happened from 2010.
And, stop going to war and try to change the CIA and the FBI and some of our domestic security. Reverse laws.
From here on, investigative journalism of this kind, in other words,
And reduce corruption in Washington and money.
Julian Assange, in a different country, in a different place, would be seen as a hero. But because he was exposing what the US and Britain in particular
To try to save money on these elections.
As 2021 comes to an end, Julian Assange is closer than ever to extradition, with courts siding with the US government. So what will 2022 bring? For a start, there can be appeals, either a cross-appeal at the Magistrates' Court or even at Supreme Court level. This could even reach the European Court of Human Rights. Point though, the Home Secretary may say enough's enough and intervene herself. Of course, Julian Assange faces 175 years behind US bars. But would that trial be fair, considering how fair this process has been in the UK? Shadi Edwards-Dashti, RT, London.
All right, that's wrapping up the newscast for this hour here on RT International. You can read more about the fate of Julian Assange, what will happen to him at RT.com. Also, more reports on Julian Assange on RT's YouTube.
End of neoliberalism.
And if we take control of our political system again, which I think we are in the middle of a cultural revolution. And I don't think it's like the Chinese Cultural Revolution that had a lot of destructive capabilities there, a lot of destructive forces were unleashed. I think what we're looking at is a redefinition of wealth, which of course you guys are a big part of, a redefinition of wealth and a redefinition of the balance between capital and labor and political power, which I call agency, control of your life and a say in public decisions.
Right, control of labor is a great topic, and it seems like cyclically speaking and historically speaking, we see periods where capital is in control, we see periods where labor is in control. In the 1970s, labor had a big say in the economic decisions being made. The minimum wage was high, labor unions were strong. Starting with Ronald Reagan, that started to unwind. Remember, he famously fired the air traffic controllers in the United States. So are you saying that we're entering into a cyclical period that's more pro-labor, where labor has
Yeah, I was
leverage?
thinking
Certainly
this
in the
was kind of
lockdowns,
cyclical.
Charles, labor has been able to exercise their collective bargaining a lot more effectively.
What's
And
old
I
is
think we
new
have to look at a
again
generational thing here. The
at a
boomers are
new,
retiring,
different time.
and for all the younger generations, that's good riddance, which I totally understand. So the millennials, there's several movements here that are, I think, manifestations of this cultural shift in what's acceptable and what's no longer acceptable. And one of them is anti-work. Another one is slow living. Another one is, it's been around a while, is FIRE, financial independence, retire early. All of those are manifestations of a desire for some kind of lifestyle that is not working 40 years to pay your student loan debt and make billionaires richer. And so I think those are all indications that the millennial generation, which is as large as the boomer generation, is regulating, these major issues, like what kind of life do I deserve? What kind of life do I want? What kind of agency, control over my life do I want? And what is wealth? Is it having a 401k that I've laboriously saved up for 40 years and that evaporates under inflation? No. And so I'm a big fan of social capital. We all know about financial wealth and various forms of that. But a big part of wealth is, who you know and the pleasure and value you take
Happiness.
in your social network and sharing and building value within your group as opposed to staring at your 401k.
In Europe, almost 20 years ago now, we covered what was called the slow food movement in Italy. And it was a pretty substantial group of people get together, and it was a response to fast food. All the fast food chains in America were expanding in Europe. Starbucks made it into Italy at some point, the home of the espresso, and this was sacrilege at the time. But is that going to be the modus operandi going forward, where people are going to say, you know what, that fast food, instant gratification culture that we were raised on, it has brought us to a place where we need to absolutely reject it. Number, that's my question. But second of all, when you remove fast moving commerce and instant gratification, you're going to remove an enormous part of the GDP of many, many countries, Charles.
That's where we also come to energy, where the whole idea of the status quo now is what we call waste is growth, right? Like the more we waste, the greater the GDP. We're all sitting in traffic jams, burning millions of gallons of fuel. Hey, we have to buy more. That's great. So waste is growth is out. And if that causes a, quote, depression
Towards a circular economy.
That's
that's
similar to a fever. In other words, that's the corrective phase of an unsustainable economy resetting to a level that is sustainable. And so
I have worries about
one of
that.
The positive things that people are starting to do is
like doing the right thing. It could cause an economic depression for a while. Until
Joseph Stiglitz is one economist who's been talking about this for years.
Have to suffer through
So I think we can start looking
until
at
you get
metrics, and that'll give
back
us a
at a better level.
Different kind of feedback about whether we're really improving life or if we're just, as Stacy said, decaying.
look at the metrics of overdose deaths for the last 12 months, it's 100,000 overdose deaths in America. It's been jumping by 20% a year for the last 2 years. So the economy is not working for a certain group of people. I think they're probably, for the most part, nowadays, deplorable white supremacists, cis white males in middle America that used to have jobs at manufacturing plants and stuff like that. But, you know, there is this partisan divide developing as well within the United States. And it seems it's mostly coming down between the coastal and the flyover states and the educated and not the uneducated, but those who don't go to university and rack up a lot of debts. So that's kind of a dividing line, this great pile of student debt, which is going to probably
I don't want to comment on the racism things.
Who went to university, who racked up those debts and got to live in nice student housing and attend nice universities and have fun for 4 or 5 years, and then there will be the other group. So in this day and age of the Great Reset, and there's calls for a Great Reset, like, who gets to hit the reset button?
Right.
And who's on the other side? Who's the winner after the reset?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to refer to historian Peter Turchin, who I've often mentioned, as a guy that talks about cycles that Max referred to. That these
the
long
planet
cycles,
and all the people.
In
It's what we
Turchin's
need.
view, people find reasons to cooperate and in an integrated stage, and then they find reasons to not cooperate in a disintegrated stage. And clearly, we're in that disintegrated stage, and so I think the process
Need to sacrifice.
that we want to encourage is to find reasons to cooperate despite our many differences.
I should actually end up in a better state,
concerns.
happier.
There's a huge number of fragmentation, sources here, but there are still reasons to cooperate as well, and so. I think we're going to have to try to find that, and that's going to require, to me,
Ease follows hardship.
That I think what I'm looking for, and I think is starting to manifest, is
You work hard and everything. You get fruits from your labor.
Political parties, and a desire to move on to find something that we can
You suffer and everything. Ease will eventually come.
Or a group of politicians who start taking and winning elections because they're independent and not a party member. So
Independent.
I think there's common ground, but it's being lost in all the fragmentation. But if you take a local community, that's where things start happening. So I kind of look at, where's this cultural revolution I'm talking about starting? It tends to start at the lowest level of the economy, not the highest level with, the lobbyists, giving billions to politicians. No, that's not where the reform's going to come from. It comes from the local communities re-electing or electing leaders who are non-partisan, who really want to find common ground.
Right. Well, this is an argument against censorship, because when you have a lot of censorship, you end up developing a monoculture, which happened during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. This is not what we're talking about. But during times of extremis, when you have economic upheaval, when cycles change, it's generally those who have been the most open-minded, the most vocal, the dissidents, the freaks, the mutants, that come to the fore, because suddenly skills that were seen as unnecessary last month are completely essential and necessary this month. And that's the way natural selection works. And when you have a lot of censorship, you're tamping down on the potential for your species to survive, because when the conditions change, you have no agility whatsoever to change with it, and you just get lost, gone with the wind, right? You're just lost. So censorship to me is an issue that needs to be vigorously fought against. Because
We have brains. We have to use our brains to
It's
respond.
very dangerous. Charles, your thoughts?
I'm glad you brought this up, Max, because your analogy of the mechanism here is perfect. Natural selection works by having variation.
Death awaits all of us anyway.
In the human world, we call descent.
Awaits all of us
The human
anyway.
society and eliminates mutation. So you're left with this stagnant, decaying wreck that has no adaptability. It can't evolve.
Build
And
a
so,
beautiful
one of my
planet,
key ideas is that
beautiful world.
politics and the society have to co-evolve. To use your analogy, is that you've got to have political dissent and political opinions, but you also have to have social innovations. And we kind of forget that what was the counterculture in the 60s and early 70s? It was largely a way of seeking out
What kind of world do we want to live in? I hope change comes.
and being productive.
I don't want no
And all that
techno
got snuffed
overloads,
because they discovered a lot of oil in the North Sea and Alaska.
techno society where people are just sick and
cheap oil, and so
scared
we could all
and
drive SUVs and all that stuff. But I think
we're
now
all just
we're in a
like
change where people are seeking
having super easy lives, but just
and
in our
and being
apartments
together.
and
And I think those
no
are the
community and
more
just
of
like
that online. That's the remedy for
trapped in some
platform
metaverse or something.
censorship, official censorship. And it's interesting. It may be that the social media giants and search giants have topped out, and people are finally rebelling against that level of totalitarianism.
Right, okay. We're going to take a break. When we come back, much more coming with Charles C. Smith of Two Minds. Don't go away.
That's a cool commercial.
In the United States, you have to be rich to be able to afford insulin. Insulin is a luxury good for sure.
Despite having the most expensive healthcare system in the world, we have poor life expectancy, we have higher infant mortality, we have more deaths from treatable causes. So Americans are suffering every day from it.
It's as if these people don't count.
I saw how they confuse their customers and dump the sick, so also they can satisfy their Wall Street investors.
No parent should have to see what I saw.
If you're denying payment for someone's care, you make life and death decision and determine who gets to live and who dies. To me, that's getting away with murder.